Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to dive straight into the legendary Bermuda Triangle and figure out what is actually happening beneath the surface. For decades, this patch of ocean has been hyped up as the absolute most deadly, dangerous, and deceptive place on Earth. I mean, we've all seen the documentaries and heard the wild conspiracies trying to explain how 20 planes, 50 ships, and hundreds of people could just simply vanish into thin air. Well, today, we're stripping away all that hearsay. We're going to look at the cold, hard data and find out exactly what is going on in this supposedly cursed water.
Let's kick things off with a massive piece of irony, shall we? We are exploring an area that doesn't even exist on official maps. Seriously, the United States government does not officially recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a real geographical location. It is nowhere to be found on a standard global map. Yet, somehow, it has completely hijacked our imaginations with tales of wreckage and doom for centuries. So how does a place that isn't formally real command so much global terror?
Well, let's look at the geography we're working with here. Unofficially, this region is bounded by the southeastern coast of the US, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. But notice how incredibly vague those boundaries are. Depending on who you ask, the total area ranges anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles. That is literally 1 million square miles of wiggle room. Because the borders keep magically shifting to fit whoever is telling the story, tracking the actual accurate number of disappearances becomes incredibly tricky right out of the gate.
Let's wind the clock back a bit and trace this mystery through time. We'll look at a few key events that built this terrifying legend, and it actually starts over half a millennium ago. The intrigue definitely didn't just pop up in the modern era. We're talking about a slow buildup over centuries, from early explorers seeing weird things, to 17th century shipwrecks that actually inspired Shakespeare to call Bermuda a cursed place in his play The Tempest, all the way up to those massive military disappearances in the 20th century.
It all really kicks off with Christopher Columbus back in 1492. While he was sailing through the Sargasso Sea, Columbus logged some very unusual events. He noted his compasses were acting up, just shifting inexplicably over a few days. He reported the sea rising to these crazy heights, and most mysteriously, he described seeing a strange light on the horizon. He said it looked like a small wax candle that rose and lifted up. Imagine hearing a story like that 500 years ago when the ocean was basically a total unknown. It is so easy to see how these fables started to take root.
Fast forward to 1881, and the legends get a whole lot spookier. Take the famous tale of the Ellen Austin, a cargo ship sailing from Liverpool to New York. The story goes that they bumped into an eerily silent ghost ship. They put a crew on board to sail it back, but a storm hit and the crew vanished. They tried it again with a second crew, a mysterious fog rolled in, and the ghost ship disappeared completely. It is an amazing, chilling story, but here is the ultimate plot twist. Lloyd's of London, which is basically the definitive shipping register, has absolutely zero record of any incidents for the Ellen Austin that year.
But look, even if we easily debunk the ghost stories, the lore gets very real and deeply tragic in March of 1918. The USS Cyclops, which was a massive 542-foot Navy cargo ship carrying over 300 men, just vanished. No wreckage, no SOS distress call, nothing. To this day, it remains the single largest loss of life in U.S. naval history outside of combat. The sudden, totally silent loss of this giant vessel prompted U.S. President Woodrow Wilson to say, "Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship," which forever cemented the area's deadly reputation.
Then, decades later, the terror literally took to the skies. December 1945, a squadron of 5 Navy torpedo bombers known as Flight 19 took off from Florida for a routine practice run. Supposedly, the leader's compass completely malfunctioned, and they got hopelessly turned around. The haunting final transmission from the flight leader was, "It looks like we are entering whitewater. We are completely lost." All 5 planes ditched at sea. And to make it even worse, a 13-man rescue plane sent out to find them vanished that exact same day. So you have centuries of strange, unconnected incidents scattered around this general area. Somebody just needed to connect the dots, right? Enter American author Vincent Gaddis. In February 1964, right at the peak of the Cold War, a time when people were already primed for conspiracy theories and global paranoia, Gaddis published an article in Argosy magazine. He formally drew the lines between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico and officially coined the term Deadly Bermuda Triangle. All of a sudden, these isolated historical tragedies were packaged into one menacing phenomenon. And man, this brilliantly shows how fast a myth can just spiral out of control. By 1974, Charles Berlitz dropped a book simply called The Bermuda Triangle, and it sold an unbelievable 20 million copies. To explain the lack of distress signals and missing wreckage, Berlitz threw out some truly wild theories: the lost city of Atlantis dragging ships down, time-traveling underwater portals, and, you guessed it, alien abductions. The ideas were so popular that Steven Spielberg even wrote Flight 19 into his sci-fi classic Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Section 1. Explaining the inexplicable, science versus fiction.
Now, as exhilarating as alien abductions and time portals are to think about, let's pull back the curtain and look at the actual science and environment here. We are stepping away from the Hollywood scripts to look at the real physics governing this patch of water. So much of the lore, from Columbus all the way to Flight 19, blames compasses just totally bugging out. But this actually comes down to a supernormal natural variation. Compasses point to magnetic north, which constantly shifts because of the Earth's molten core. True north, however, is the static geographic North Pole. The difference between those 2 points is called magnetic declination, and if you don't calculate for it properly, you're going to end up miles off course. Simple as that.
Which brings us to this next concept, the agonic line. This is basically an imaginary line on the Earth where true north and magnetic north line up perfectly, meaning you have zero magnetic declination. Navigators always have to compensate for how far they are from this line. Now, what's really fascinating is that the agonic line actually did pass directly through the Bermuda Triangle in the past, but science has tracked that it drifts westward every year. Today, it actually sits over in the Gulf of Mexico. So relying on that whole magnetic anomaly argument is honestly pretty outdated and inaccurate.
When you really look closely, the actual monsters of the triangle emerge, and they are purely environmental. First off, this area is an absolute highway for devastating hurricanes. Second, the Gulf Stream runs right through it. This is a violently turbulent ocean current, moving up to 300 times faster than the Amazon River. It can easily throw inexperienced sailors off course and swallow up wreckage in a matter of hours. Combine that with fully documented rogue waves that can unexpectedly spike to 100 feet tall, and you have incredibly treacherous but 100% natural hazards.
You might have also heard about this newer scientific theory that made massive headlines, suggesting that giant pockets of methane gas trapped in the ocean floor were erupting. These explosive burps of death would theoretically drop the water density so fast that ships would instantly sink like a rock. Now, researchers did find massive methane craters off the coast of Norway, but they made it exceptionally clear that they are not claiming this is happening in the Bermuda Triangle. It's a super cool environmental phenomenon for sure, but highly unlikely to be the culprit sinking ships off the coast of Florida.
Section 2. What the data actually says. The ultimate plot twist.
All right, so we've got brutal natural hazards plus documented human error, like did you know the pilot of Flight 19 actually had a known history in the military of getting lost? But what happens when we strip away all the anecdotes and just look at the hard statistics? Prepare yourselves, because the actual data reveals the ultimate plot twist in this centuries-old mystery. Researchers took a massive data set of over 150,000 global marine records from 1982 to 2015 and isolated about 9,000 major marine casualties worldwide. Out of those 9,000 incidents, only 361 happened in the Bermuda Triangle. That is literally just 4%. And get this, during that entire 33-year period, absolutely zero incidents in the triangle were officially classified as an unexplained disappearance.
Let's look at even more recent data from Lloyd's List, the global shipping publication, for the year 2021. Out of over 8,600 boats that actively sailed right through the Bermuda Triangle that year, there were exactly 2 casualties. 2. That makes the mysterious casualty rate a totally measly 0.02%. According to the numbers, the danger of disappearing in the Bermuda Triangle is actually 90 times lower than the global average.
So here's the real kicker. When you map out ocean hazards globally, this supposedly cursed area is phenomenally safe. For the past 10 years, the absolute worst affected areas for shipping losses have actually been the South China and Philippines regions, followed by the East Mediterranean and Black Sea. The Bermuda Triangle? It doesn't even crack the top 10 list of the most dangerous ocean regions in the world today. It's not even close.
And if you're wondering about the skies above it, the aviation data from the National Transportation Safety Board tells the exact same story. Most of the historically cited airplane incidents actually just happened during normal takeoffs and landings in the Bahamas. In fact, since 1965, there has been exactly one commercial aviation incident documented over Bermuda, a JetBlue flight that hit severe weather and experienced some turbulence. Statistically, you are at no more risk flying or sailing through this fabulously unremarkable area than literally anywhere else on Earth.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating final thought for you to ponder.
We've seen that the compass variations are totally normal. The extreme weather is just a well-documented hazard, and the casualty numbers are actually lower than the global average. The curse is officially busted. Yet, if the data proves this area is just a normal, albeit occasionally stormy patch of ocean, why do we all still so eagerly cling to the spooky supernatural myth over the boring reality? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.